we're back at the PDAC 2020, and I've been waiting for a while to have this particular guest on. A very special guest, David Morgan. We know each other for quite a few years now, and yeah, I'm really happy to have you on because I want to get your insights on the silver market, right? And everything that's going on in the last week anyway. So, so David Morgan, let's talk about, you had some really interesting commentary lately that kind of caught my eye, where you mentioned about Greg Hunter. Well, you had an interview with Greg Hunter in February, and you mentioned three really interesting points actually from some recent commentary on the market overall, but silver particularly. So let's talk about, you mentioned that Max Kaiser was saying the silver would outperform gold, Bitcoin in 2020, and then Scott Maynard, co-founder and partner of Guggenheim, was in Davos, and he was asked, what is your number one conviction buy of 2020? And he mentioned silver, and they were actually a little taken aback, but I'll let you go into the specifics there. And then lastly, you mentioned that gold stocks are 60% up on average. Pretty much best performing sector of the S&P, which was only 29% in 2019. Yeah. So what are your comments on what you were talking about? I'll let you expand on that.
Well, the comment on Max Kaiser is self-explanatory. I was doing an interview. I happened to be in the area, and I'm friendly with them. And they were kind enough to invite me over to their studio, so we did a quick shoot, and I gave him a silver dollar, and he smiled and tore up a dollar and started it. And he's the one that brought up the comment. I expect silver outperformed Bitcoin. In fact, I think that was a later interview. I think that was a Skype interview.
Got it.
So anyway, I commented on his comment. I said, wow, I'm really surprised to hear that coming from you because, a pretty big Bitcoin advocate. So that's number one. On the Davos, Scott Maynard situation, I think that's really powerful. I mean, people, the elites go to Davos. I mean, those are private jets and limousines and all that stuff. And someone at his level to say silver's a conviction is very, very powerful. So, and the reasons too. I mean, the interviewer from Bloomberg basically kind of rocked back on his heels and said, silver, why not gold? And he said, because gold's pretty close to its nominal high. And silver isn't. It's very undervalued. And silver does have that monetary base still, although the older I get, the less young people ever even knew silver was the monetary base of the financial system for thousands of years, basically. It's gold as well. It's really bimetallic most places.
Right.
So that is unknown, but the monetary demand or investment demand, I mean, there's a lot of, not a lot, there's very few people that are in the palladium market. And palladium actually fits all the classic definitions of money, but no one thinks of it as money. But they think of it as an investment class metal. And so silver doesn't have to be money by anyone's consciousness. I think it could be, again, it certainly is in mine, but regardless of what I think, if the market thinks it's a good investment, money or not, and we don't need much. I mean, 1% of the world's assets are in the gold market, 0.02% are in the silver market. So I think you could see 1% of the people out there that are worried about the financial system at large and want to hedge, move that 1% in gold to 2%. But just think about 0.02%. What if that was a fourfold factor and silver's a smaller market? So I still think silver will outperform gold.
Interesting. Okay, and what was very interesting this last week here actually was the gold-silver ratio. It reached its peak, I mean, its highest ever, I think, at 100. And the last time it was around 92.
Well, it has been to 100 two times before.
Oh, it has? Okay, fair enough. Okay.
But there's...
what are your thoughts on that then?
Well, I think that's it. I really think it's not going to go much higher. Usually after it hits 100, there's a financial crisis. If you look back in history and see when the ratio hit 100, that was a forecast of a financial crisis. Looks like we're in one or starting one again. So time will tell if that's correct or not. I'm just giving you fact. Look it up. I do think that that's about as far as it goes. And usually once it hits that ratio, it doesn't stay long. It's not like 100 to 1 for the next 2 years. It's a spike. And then the crisis unravels, unfolds, manifests, whatever word you want, and you start to see the ratio come down from 190, 80, 70, that type of thing. I think that that's where we're at. I think that we're repeating that again, and this one may be the big one, the one that myself and many others have forecasted for so long that the whole financial paradigm comes into question, and there could be, not necessarily would be, but could be a realignment of how the whole system is based on a new monetary system or a new way of doing monetary transactions, i.e. perhaps the blockchain. So
Yeah.
time will tell, very interesting times.
Well, I mean, Ray Dalio has commented many times before that there's a big paradigm shift that's coming to the markets. Now,
I wrote
all
about
the
in the recent
central
Morgan report that just got issued today, basically, and I said that it looks to me like when we're moving toward a cashless society, and that we're going to see probably some type of blockchain type of system enacted, whether it'll be national or international, remains to be determined, and I could be wrong, but that certainly seems to be the push. I also caution people into thinking this through, which means that we don't want to look to like a Bitcoin or a Litecoin or a certain already blockchain distributed ledger technology that exists to be the go-to thing. These governments aren't going to do that. They're not going to say, oh, Bitcoin's the way to go. They will invent their own.
Yeah.
Look, blockchain, the distributed ledger is basically open source.
Right.
So they'll just take that, and that's why there's so many, crypto crazies.
Exactly,
Because
yeah.
you can copy it,
Multiple,
cut and
yeah.
paste it, and say,
Yeah.
hey, put a new name on it.
Yeah.
So the government will do that, and it could go as far, I'm not saying it would, but could, where, you use the Fed coin, the Fed crypto, if you're US based, and all others are null and void.
Yeah.
Or they can be used amongst yourselves, but they cannot be used
Yeah.
in any, transaction that involves the stock market or
Right.
involves chain grocery store, whatever. I'm
Yeah.
just making this up. I'm not making it up off the top of my head. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
But these monopolies don't want to lose the most powerful monopoly that is, and that's control. Control is
Interesting.
about money. And money is going under more and more control because when you're on the blockchain, they know everything about you.
Right.
They know every transaction you make. You're going to tax it, at point of sale probably.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can't be monitored about.
Yeah.
And that gives them ultimate control.
Yeah.
And that's the direction we're going. So it's very concerning to me, but it's something that looks like it's in the near future.
Interesting. So then let's step away and let's talk about the banks now. You mentioned before that the banks don't trust each other. This is primarily related to the repo loans and the lack of trust in the foreign exchange. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of how that plays into the precious metal sector and silver specifically?
Well, it's absolutely true that, if a bank doesn't trust another bank for an overnight loan, we're in big trouble.
Yep.
And that's the system that we're in. And so then there's the walk of shame, as it's referred to, as a metaphor for any bank that has to go directly to the discount window to borrow from the Federal Reserve to meet the reserve requirements. Because
Right.
basically the reserve requirement is you have to have this much cash at this point every day,
Right.
or your balance sheet isn't correct, so you got to borrow the money from somebody to
Right.
make it meet the minimum reserve requirement.
Right. Yeah.
Well, banks aren't loaning to other banks, so they're going to discount window. Well, JP Morgan just came out and said, we're going to go to the discount window from right now because there's no shame involved.
Right.
So they're trying to set the scene that the Fed's main bank, which is JP Morgan, it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's been that way now for some time. So this shows that there's lack of trust in the system. It's all built on confidence. It's all a big game, really. And the game is coming to an end, and I think the reason we can verify that is what's going on in the repo market, the amount of quantitative easing that the Fed has to do, even though they're backing away quite a bit from the term quantitative easing. I think we're at, 500 billion or something at this point, $500 billion so far since
Right.
the last few months
Yeah.
into the repo market just to keep these banks from going under because they don't trust each other. So we are, in my view, getting closer to that edge of the cliff or that point of no return of the big abyss, or however you'd like to refer to it, that many in my ilk have talked about for years and years. And it happened in 2008, it really did. It was able to come back because they got rid of the non-trustable paper, the mortgage-backed securities and the default, credit default swaps and the the rehypothecation, making a bet on a bet on a bet on a bet if you watch the big short.
Yeah.
All that kind of went away because the Fed came in and said, give me this absolutely worthless crap and I'll give you treasury bills for it, give you something really good, and kept the system moving.
Yeah.
But it had halted for, I don't know if it was 12 milliseconds or half a day, but it really did, or was coming to a very big stop.
Yeah.
And once the money flow stops, it's over.
Yeah.
And they kept it flowing. But whether or not that'll be accomplished this time or not, probably will. I think they're a little wiser from getting the crap scared out of them, really. And obviously came to the rescue quickly enough where the system did not seize up. So interesting times, Sonny.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
interesting times.
Well, interesting times in the fact, okay, so what are some new I guess this kind of leads to the question of like catalysts for silver. So are there any interesting industrial uses for silver? Let's talk about that side of the equation now.
There's
Anything
always new stuff coming into the silver market. I mean, if you want to look at it, you should go to the Silver Institute's website every few months.
Or the morganreport.com.
Or mine, yeah, and show you, one thing is the biocidal properties. I don't know if it can do anything with Corona or not.
Yeah.
But it is a biocide. If every door handle was silver plated, just a little bit. I'm not talking about sterling silver here. I'm talking about nanoparticles. It still would kill all the bacteria.
Yeah, of course.
If this thing accelerates, and I don't know if it will or not. I really don't. I'm still a little skeptical of the whole thing. But assuming that it does progress, a lot of it will not be the virus. It will be basic bacteria problems. So, there's that. I don't see anything really big. I actually interviewed Cliff High, who's a very interesting gentleman and very knowledgeable about a lot of topics, about what he calls the new electrics, and asked him if there was going to be silver involved in that.
Interesting.
And he gave me an answer, basically a certain yes, in a way. The answer is basically yes, but more on a physics look at silver on capturing electrons. I mean, it's just not over my head, but it's a little esoteric. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I asked him in quantity, is it going to be that big? It's not. It's more in a nanostructure type of thing. It's not like, there's going to be another 1 million ounces of silver demand or something like that.
Interesting. Okay, so what's your outlook for silver price in 2020?
Still higher. I mean, we've been hammered the last Friday as we're doing this interview.
Yeah.
We were up to in the 18, building a pretty good base around there.
Yeah, now we're at mid-16.
Something. So it scares out a lot of people. I mean, the function of a bull market is to scare as many people off the back of the bull as possible.
Yeah.
That happened last week. A lot of my clients were pretty scared, and I did a video just before I came to the conference and said, look, one day doesn't make a market, one of my famous sayings, and it scares out a lot of people. Whether you should buy this dip or not remains to be determined. I don't know yet. But it could be, and it probably will be, a pretty quick whipsaw. So, hold on. The problem is some people use leverage, which you got to be a pro to do that. And if you're leveraged, these kind of big moves like this could kill you.
Of course.
So, and if you look back, I don't know, I have to look at a chart, but from my pretty good thinking, probably 12 trading days ago, or 13, something along those lines, where we just broke through the 1550 level. So we go from 1550 to 1670 or whatever it was, and now we're still above 1550. So if you took out those 12 trading days and said that gold went from 1555 flatlined and we're still at 1556, I think was the number, everybody would be happy. Since we made it all the way up 100-something bucks and came down, oh my God, the world's ending. But wait a minute. Technically, we're still very strong.
Well, this is the key support level around this range.
It is.
If we drop below
this, I'll start to
1380 or 1400, then I think that will be the next test, right? To see how we go forward in the next few quarters. But it all depends on how this panic gets kind of a little bit calm here, or for people to reinvest in the market again. But we'll see in the next few weeks, right? It could just come up just as fast as it went down. So, okay. So then I guess the last question is, are you a bear or bull this year, 2020?
I'm bullish.
Yeah?
There's too many things that are going into the financial system that are going to push the safe haven asset classes higher.
And is there anything particular you're looking at into this in the sector, like in terms of stages of stage of development of companies that you look at, or jurisdiction? Is there anything that grabs your attention?
You mean specific company specific?
Not specific companies, but just specific things that you look at for when you look at a
Well, what we've already discussed. I mean, look at the repo market. I look at what the bankers are saying. I look at what Scott Maynard has the guts to say about the silver market. I kind of factor all these things in. And
but how about the companies itself, like in terms of jurisdiction
or
technical team, that kind of thing?
Or... Well, when I evaluate a company, that could take an hour just to explain that. In fact, I did do it in
next year.
Silver Manifesto. Wrote a whole chapter on how we choose a mining company.
Fair
so
enough.
that's actually in print if you wanted to.
Okay, and that's
take
on the website?
Time to read it. Well, it's silvermanifesto.com. I'm out of books right now.
Okay.
But I just bought some from China.
Okay.
So I'm going to have like 1,000 books if they ever get here, and I'll re-up the website, and you can buy them directly from me.
Okay, we'll put the link below for sure.
Yeah, okay.
To your website.
All right.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot, David. Really appreciate it. Your time. If you want to find out more about David Morgan, his newsletter, go to themorganreport.com, and I'll put a link in the description below, and you can get in touch with David directly to ask anything about the silver market. He's a go-to guy for anything on the silver. So, thanks a lot, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. Okay.